There are certainly times, and everybody deals with this, and I don't care what profession you're in, but it's also true in fighter aviation, where you're going to question whether or not you are capable of achieving what they're expecting from you. The first real challenge where I look back in my career of learning to be a fighter pilot, the first real challenge where I questioned whether or not I was going to be successful was my first trip to the carrier in the F-18. You know, there's always challenges in flight school, but for the most part, I did pretty well, and I was confident and I was comfortable. And I'd gone through the F-18 training program, and I'd done pretty well there too. In naval aviation, and by the way, that's Marine Corps and Navy jets flying at the carrier, we call the carrier the great equalizer. The carrier is by far the most demanding, the most challenging, the most unforgiving environment. And you could be really good as a naval aviator in a whole bunch of different things, but if you can't land on the boat, you are useless. So your first trip to the carrier, the first evaluation of the carrier, is a huge test. And there's weeks of maybe 6 weeks of training and preparation for your first flight in an F-18 to the carrier. In those 6 weeks of training, there's a lot of academics, a lot of courses, but really most of it is you taking an F-18 and flying on a regular runway, but it's painted up to look like a carrier deck. And there's even something there called a meatball. And all the meatball is a series of lights that sit on an aircraft carrier, which tells the pilot whether you're high or low. And they have one of those at the practice field as well. Nothing fully prepares you for the first time you roll out and what you're really looking at is an actual aircraft carrier. Well, my very first attempt at landing on an aircraft carrier, an F-18, is what was called a wave off, which means the landing was so bad that the person on the flight deck, the landing signal officer, halfway through the landing, he deemed it so unsafe he asked me to just leave and do it again. I was in the cockpit, I kind of shook things off, I came back around for my second attempt at landing, and the second attempt at landing was called a bolter, which means I was so high and landed so long that I missed the wires that bring you to a stop, and I went around again. And so literally in my first 2 attempts at landing on a carrier were awful. And then you're just sitting there essentially alone with your thoughts. And my thoughts were, oh, apparently I'm not very good at landing F-18s on aircraft carriers. And there was a moment there where I convinced myself I might not be able to do this. That is a very bad place to be when you're looking over the shoulder at an aircraft carrier thinking I have to go land on this, and you're starting to doubt yourself. But it was also an incredibly important experience where I had to remind myself, all right, listen, I can't do anything about what just happened. I can't take those 2 passes back. I can't redo them. I can't rewind. They happen. And now I have an opportunity to prove to my instructors, I can either get past those difficult moments or I can't. And so I really recall very, very clearly on the downwind leg, looking over my left shoulder, looking at the boat thinking, hey man, you can do this, and more importantly, you have to do this. Taking a deep breath, detaching from the frustration, getting past those emotions that were trying to overwhelm me in the cockpit. And listen, I wasn't perfect in my next 6 or 7 passes, but I certainly gathered enough composure and got aboard the ship and proved that I was capable of doing it. And it was a hugely impactful moment because I went on to fly around carriers a lot in my career. And the start of that was a pretty bad start and left with me a lot of doubt at that moment that I had to get past. But also it was a huge confidence builder that I could do that in the future.